Hello everyone, Charles Watts here, the Arsenal correspondent at Goal, joining you for part 2 of this week's Q&A. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, please do head over to the videos page and you will find it there. I had to split it into 2 parts really because there's so many of you replied to my tweet I put out earlier in the week and the video had just gone on forever and ever and ever. So let's get cracking. I'm not going to waste any more time. We'll go straight into part 2. This is from Samuel. With the current 3-4-3 formation, can you see Bukayo Saka in the starting lineup? Where does he fit? Well, this is an interesting one because I kind of talked about it in part 1 yesterday. One of the questions about Ainsley Maitland-Niles. I think Saka absolutely does fit at the moment with the some of the issues Arsenal have got in terms of injuries, certainly at centre back because Kieran Tierney's filling in on the left side of the 3, but he's finding himself out the side because of the form of Ainsley Maitland-Niles over on that side. So it's tough for Saka, but I do think we have to remember, look, the kid is very, very young. You know, he had this amazing breakthrough and he's so good. He's fantastic. But he is very, very young, so he doesn't really need to be playing week in, week out. Arsenal have got to take their time with Saka. Be careful with him as well. Don't overplay him at such a young age. So I think it's good that there are other options out there. For Arsenal, but look, Saka's still going to play plenty of football. As I've said loads of times in previous questions, there's so many games to be played this season in a short space of time. I mean, the Arsenal's fixture list between now and January is absolutely crazy. So he's going to play plenty, and he's not just pigeonholed to the left-hand side, as we saw in the Community Shield. He was fantastic over on the right. He can even play centrally. So Saka's going to get plenty of football. Don't you worry about that. I just don't think at the moment he's absolutely a guaranteed starter. And for Arsenal, that's not necessarily a bad thing because it shows that other players are performing very, very well. Arindu says, how good do you say our structure on the field has improved since Arteta? And are we still depending a lot on Orba to finish and guide us over the line? Well, yes, we are. Look, Arsenal are still relying on Aubameyang, but that's what you do when you have one of the world's best strikers in your team. You're relying on him for goals, and that's what he's doing. He's scoring goals. But Laka scored at the weekend, which is nice, and I'm expecting Laka to certainly chip him more goals this season than he did last season, because last season was a struggle for Laka, but I still think he's going to score a fair amount of goals this season. And I think that the reliance in Orba's there, but it's the same with any other team. You know, when Manchester City play, obviously rely fairly heavily on Aguero for goals, or De Bruyne and Sterling do fit in. When Liverpool play, they've got the forwards there. Arsenal don't have the squad depth for those type of teams. When you've got 2 or 3 players scoring plenty of goals, obviously there is slightly more reliance on Orba at the moment, but it's just the way it is. Unfortunately, I wouldn't say they rely. He absolutely gets them over the line in every single game. He doesn't in most of them, but I think the structure's certainly improved. I think Willian's going to be a huge signing this season. I think he showed against Fulham how quickly he slots in. I think he's going to hopefully lessen some of the burden from Aubameyang as well, because I'm going to hope Willian's certainly going to get between sort of 10 and 15 goals this season maybe, and plenty of assists as well. You kind of hope Pepe's going to get between 10 and 15 goals. I'd say Lacazette, you want to be targeting 15 goals. It's a real struggle for Arsenal last season. The reliance was so huge on Aubameyang, but I think with those sort of players, you're hoping they're going to get, certainly in double figures, you're going to have 4 players at least. And I still think Nketiah's got a really good breakthrough season in him this season for me. I think if he just calms down a little bit in front of goal, and plays with the type of confidence he does when he plays an international duty with the under-21s or when he's played in the youth team, such clinical finisher usually. I just think he's a little bit nervous when he's in the first team, that he has to take his chances. But I'm expecting Eddie to chip him with a fair amount of goals. I'll be disappointed if Eddie doesn't get up to around at least the double figures mark this season as well. Shan the Man says, your opinion on this: Partey in, priority signing; Arwar, the dream signing, qualify for the Champions League next season, pay Upamecano's release clause, permanent deal for Ceballos, sign Arwar if not possible this season. I'm not sure about Upamecano for me. I still feel like he's, as much as Arsenal like him, I still feel like he's probably going to end up elsewhere if he does go. When he does go, I'll be surprised if he ends up at Arsenal. I think also Arsenal have invested an awful lot of money on Saliba and Gabriel as well, and they want to see that investment start to pay off for me. So I just feel like Upamecano is maybe going to be a bridge too far. Look, I love your what you're saying there, and I think if Partey and Aouar come in this season, then Champions League's entirely gettable. We'll just have to wait and see. So my opinion on it is what you said is very, very nice. I'm just not sure about the release clause for Upamecano, and I'm still not convinced that Ceballos will end up being a permanent fixture at Arsenal. I feel like they'll probably look elsewhere. I think if you get Aouar on a permanent basis, is there really room to get Ceballos on a permanent basis as well? I'm not so sure. Samuel says, Charles, how much current cash can be used by the club in the transfer window? I say, because I can't answer it. I'm not an Arsenal accountant. I don't know exactly how much money they've got. So, for example, you say if we sell Emi for £20 million and a loan fee of £8 million with an obligation to buy, I'm presuming you're talking about Serrera, then does it mean that we are able to take £20-30 million to get Partey and Aouar? No, not necessarily, because money transfers are structured. It's not a case of 20 million up front for Emi Martinez. I don't know what it is, because it's only a very select few people at both clubs know exactly what the structure of the deal is. So it's not a case of Arsenal getting £20 million from Emi and going to be able to spend £20 million elsewhere. You've got structured deals. And I asked Vinay Venkatesham, we had an interview with him the other day, and I said, are Arsenal definitely in a case now of having to sell before they buy? And he kind of said no. And it doesn't work like that. And he explained what I'm explaining there, probably in better terms the way I'm explaining it, how deals are structured over the length of players' contracts. It's not a case of paying the money up front for players. So it's tough to really look at it like that. It's not as simple as the way you've put it out there. And but in terms of your question, how much current cash can be used, I just don't know that. It's only 2 or 3 people in the world who know that, and they're very much the guys with the fingers on the purse strings at Arsenal, and 2 of them are over in America. What loans are on the table for Arsenal's younger stars, says Crazy8. You talk about Reece Nelson later on in that question. I've already answered that. I think in part 1 of the Q&A about Reece Nelson, I think I wouldn't be surprised if he heads out on loan this season. Emil, maybe, as we get closer to the window, as I said earlier, as we get closer to the end of the window, if they might decide to do something with Emil. But I think a lot of people ask about Joe Willock. I think Joe Willock will stay for the season. Lordy C says, firstly, loving your stuff on here, YouTube and Gold. Charles Watts, thank you, Lordy, appreciate that. If it happened, do you think a midfield of Xhaka, Ceballos and Partey offers the goals and assists we are lacking? Not necessarily, but I think you've got to factor Willian into the equation when it comes to goals and assists. Although he's not in part of that midfield 3, I think he certainly adds I think he'll add goals and assists from that perhaps Arsenal were lacking a bit. We'll certainly give more. It will help with that. So I don't, and I've said before, I think Partey as well is not necessarily a midfield enforcer that everyone thinks he is. I think he's certainly got that to his game, but he does add a little bit more going forward as well. I hope that answers your question, Lordy. Joe says, hi Charles, do you feel Mikel is being backed financially, or is the self-sustaining model working against him? Look, of course Mikel will want unlimited money to go out and buy who he wants. He'd love to be able to get Partey in now. He'd love to be able to get Aouar in now. So in that way, the sustainable model's working against him. But he knew what he was getting into when he came here. He knew he wasn't joining a club that's got an owner that bankrolls the club. It just doesn't happen. Kroenke's never put any money in. It hasn't his own money into when it comes to transfers or anything like that. He hasn't from the moment he arrives in the door, and he's not going to change that now. This is Stan Kroenke we're talking about. Everyone knows how he operates. Mikel Arteta knows how he operates. So it's working against him in a way, because he would love to be having Abramovich or Sheikh Mansour or something like that. But he knew what he was getting into when he arrived at Arsenal. So I don't think Mikel can have any complaints, like I said, because he knew what he was getting into when he decided to take the job. Carithi, I think is the name here, says, hi Charles Watts, do you think keeping El Neni will end up being a great business? I'm not sure. Look, I think El Neni would be great at Fulham, fair play to him, but I don't see El Neni being a long-term solution of Arsenal's midfield. I think Ceballos, once he's fit and up and running and peak fitness, he's going to come in and El Neni will be back on the bench, or El Neni might even be sold or moved on again on loan before the window shuts if Arsenal can get another midfielder in. So no, to the answer to your question, I don't think he is going to be. I don't think he's going to end up being great business, and I still think it's more likely than not that Elneny might head out again on at least on loan if Arsenal can get their priority targets in midfield. DSPC says, until KSE provides some proper funding, what chance do Arsenal fans of actually seeing the club challenge for the Premier League and the Champions League? And if they won't give us said funding, do you believe there's a chance of them selling? I'm not sure. Unless because of what's happening with COVID and financial implications, they're forced into it. That's the only way I can see KSE selling up. They've never sold up in terms of any of their financial, their sporting franchises before. Arsenal is very much their big major sporting franchise over here. Well, it's the only one over here, but it's they get Arsenal's just a huge cash cow for them. They're not putting in their own money in. They've seen their investment go up and up and up in terms of Arsenal's valuation, and I just don't. I'd be very, very surprised. In terms of, do I think Arsenal can challenge for the Premier League title without funding? Look, Liverpool have done it. They've got a club that operates basically to a self-sustainable model. They've done it by hiring a very good manager, which Arsenal have done as well, and have done it by recruiting well, which Arsenal have done terribly in the last 5 or 6 years. If they can sort that out and start recruiting well, then they can compete. It's as simple as that. Recruitment is so important, and Arsenal have been awful at it for so long. Now they've just got to make sure, because you think Arsenal spent a hell of a lot of money recently. They're not paupers by any means. Although Kroenke doesn't put his own money in, Arsenal still spent an awful lot of money in recent years. They've just spent it largely terribly and wasted an awful lot of it. If they get it right with recruitment, and I feel a lot more confident with Mikel Arteta there now at the moment, because I think he's got a clear idea of the exact sort of player he wants, then Arsenal can compete. Liverpool have shown it, and Arsenal can do it. So that's just where we are. But in terms of if you're expecting Kroenke to start ploughing his own money in, then it's just not going to happen. I'm not. At Gunnar Armstrong says, so Project Arsenal has started to take shape. We've re-signed our talisman of Aubameyang. How many players are we looking to add to complement to our current squad? I still think a couple between now and the end of the window is certainly probably Arsenal's aim. Plus the goal. Sorry, that's not including Runarsson, who is very close to signing. By the time you watch this, he might even have signed. So he's the goalkeeper, obviously, for the Icelandic keeper coming in for Dijon for a couple of £1 million. So possibly 2 in terms of outfield players, but you've got to add the goalkeeper into that as well. So 3. What do you think will happen to Laka? Will enter his final year of his contract next year? I mean, it's an interesting one. This comes from someone who calls themselves Guendouzi. Laka, because he's under 2 years left of his contract now. I asked Arteta about Lacazette last week and said, he's going to, given his contract situation, does it mean if he's going to stay, then he's going to have to sign a new one? And he kind of fudged the question a little bit, but he very much said that Lacazette had told him that he wanted to stay. We saw Lacazette's interview he did over with the French media before the Fulham game, saying he wanted to stay. So it makes sense. If he's going to stay, then you kind of think, well, Arsenal should probably try and protect their investment a little bit, even if it's a relatively short-term extension. Then they should look to do that. Matt Esther says, do you think Arsenal will pull off an Aouar and Partey double transfer? Look, that's the big $1 million question. Can Arsenal do it? I've said it all along. I'd be surprised if they get both. I'm not going to sit here and rule it out, because you never know. You never know what deals they could do. You never know what who they could sell. You never know what deal they might be able to manage to get with one of the selling clubs. Atletico might soften their stance because they need the money when it comes to Partey. So I'm not going to sit here and absolutely rule out the chance of Arsenal getting both, but I still think it's probably on the unlikely side. I think if they're going to get, they might get one, but getting 2, I think that would be party time for Arsenal fans. But I'd be surprised just because of the level of investment. That's going to be over £100 million they're going to be committing to, pretty much, or certainly around the 100 million mark. It'll be over 100 million euros, and that's an awful lot for Arsenal, who are fairly financially hamstrung at the moment. So I think that's probably looking a little bit unlikely. Joey says, "Hi Charles, how come Arsenal didn't go for Malang Sarr in the end? Was it a case of Gabriel being the number one target? And now the goal is off to load. Now the goal is to offload defenders." I do think that is absolutely it. Look, Malang Sarr was one of Arsenal's targets, so was Ozil, but they've both gone elsewhere, and Arsenal focused on Gabriel. Gabriel was very much first choice target of the scouting team. He was a defender, the left-sided defender that they put at the very top of their list, which they sent over to the recruitment department to try and sign, aka Edu and Raul, who was still there at that time. So Gabriel was first choice, and that's why they didn't sign Malang Sarr. Another question about Laka from Shashwata, saying, "We know Mikel's fondness over Laka. What looks more likely with him?" I think now it's looking more likely he's going to stay. I think given how close we are to the end of the transfer window and nothing's really happened with Laka, we're certainly looking at the stage that he wants to stay, and he's made it clear with talks with Mikel Arteta that he does want to stay. Jeff says, "Could the price tag for Edouard drop if we get closer to the end of the window?" The issue with that is you've got to remember who you're dealing with. You're dealing with Jean-Michel Aulas, who's a very tough negotiator. So I can't see him suddenly waving the white flag and drastically reducing the price for Edouard. He's told Edouard he can go if a club meets what they're asking for him. Edouard wants to leave. Everyone knows that. Aulas knows that. Arsenal know that. But it's a case of hitting the valuation that Leon, that Aulas and that Janino are asking for. At the moment, Arsenal haven't done that. Hopefully they can before the window closes, and with the help of selling a few more players, they will be able to be in a better position to at least try and tempt Leon into doing business. Guerev says, "Update on Kolasinac transfers. There's been no news around Carlisle since the last couple of weeks." I think I mentioned this in the first one. Look, Carlisle, it's a hard one to get out. Arsenal would like to get him out. Certainly not against it. There's been interest in him from England and in Germany. You know, there's Leverkusen. They're in talks with Leverkusen, very early stages of those talks with Leverkusen. There's an option there. West Ham have been linked with him as well. Kolasinac, from what I've always been told, is very happy in London, not in any rush to leave. He's still making it on the bench as well, as he did against Fulham weekend. So it's not like he's been totally frozen out from Arteta, but obviously he'd like to be playing week in, week out. And if someone can offer that, it's just the fact that Kolasinac is on very good money. He's on about 100 grand a week because he arrived as a free transfer. So Arsenal gave him very, very good wages because of that. That makes it difficult for them to move it on. But there are talks ongoing. He's certainly one that Arsenal would like to get out before the window closes, and there are talks ongoing with potentially for that to happen. Like I said, Leverkusen, one of those clubs over in Germany. Are the finances with Pepe's yearly instalments to Lille hindering what we could do in the transfer market for a couple of years? Asks Ham. No, not as far as I'm aware. Ham, simple answer on that. Fax says, "Do you think Oscar's comments might be a reason for him to join the Arsenal?" No, I'm not expecting Oscar to join Arsenal, plain and simple. Are Arsenal being tough on the selling price of Balogun because they're trying to renew his contract? Says Shkumzo. Sorry, I bet that's terrible pronunciation. I don't think so. I think Arsenal just don't want to let go of Balogun for a very low price. Sheffield United are offering about 3 million for Balogun. Arsenal want more than that. They rejected 5 million from Brentford in January. So I still expect Balogun probably to go. I'm not expecting him to suddenly sign a new contract, but while he's still at the club, there's always a chance of that. They could have a change of change of thinking. But last time that I was speaking to someone about Balogun, the situation hadn't changed. Talks had stopped over a new contract. Arsenal felt what they'd offered him before was fair. He obviously didn't think that, and his people didn't think that. And nothing's really changed for me in that. So the contract offer was pulled from the table, and nothing's really changed for me. We saw his cryptic tweet. What does that mean? It was obviously similar to the sand timer that Aubameyang was tweeting. People were taking that as a possibility that he's now in contract talks and he could stay. Hopefully, I'd love Balogun to stay. I saw him play, saw him score a hat-trick against Barnet last summer. Sensational hat-trick. Love to see him stay, but I still think the most likely option is that he does go. Nara asked about is that Edouard you're talking about? I'm not sure if that's Edouard. If you are talking about Edouard, Nara up at Celtic, obviously Arsenal being a heavy link with Edouard. I've said it before, Arsenal they're keen on him, they like him, they've watched him an awful lot. There had been talk about bids and stuff. From what I've been told, that's not the case, and there hasn't been any real sort of firm contact with Arsenal and Celtic over Edouard. And I'd be surprised if they've got other priorities elsewhere at the moment. Why would Arsenal be signing Edouard while Lacazette's still here? It doesn't really make sense to me. So I wouldn't be getting too excited about Edouard possibly signing in this transfer window. But he is a player that Arsenal like. Hi Charles, could Orba's contract renewal have something to do with him believing that Arteta will make certain signings to improve the squad, said Martin Stark? Well, Orba's already happy with the signings Arsenal's made. He said it himself with the interview he did with Ian Wright. I don't think it's necessarily Arsenal giving him any assurances over who they're going to sign. I think it's just that Orba's bought more into Arteta more than who Arteta might sign. He loves Arteta. He loves working for Arteta. He's excited to continue working under Arteta. So I think that's more of a case of why he signed, not because of what he's been promised or any assurances he's been given. I think we're beginning to come to an end of this. As always, when I get to this sort of stage, I'm going through the questions I haven't answered yet. And they're all fairly similar to the ones that I've already answered, so I'm not going to go over it. Wham here asks, with Ozil being out of contract next season, therefore not forking out 350 grand a week, how will that affect our spending? It will affect Arsenal's spending massively. That's going to be a saving of around £20 million a year for Arsenal when Ozil finally does go next season. So that's clearly going to be a huge benefit to them in terms of space on the wage bill and potentially freeing up a little bit of extra transfer fund as well. So it's going to be massive. That's why Arsenal will be desperate to get rid of Mesut Ozil now, and they've been desperate to get rid of him over the last couple of windows. But it's been impossible to do that. He's very determined to stay and see out his contract. So when it finally does happen, it's going to be huge for Arsenal. Aman says, do you know if Martinez deal has a buyback option? Not as far as I'm aware. Oh man, no. Just going scrolling through, making sure there's nothing I've missed out of answering. No, I think we're about it now, really. Aaron emailed me, actually. I'll answer yours. Aaron, you said, hey Charles, wanted to send in a question for Q&A. Everyone is talking about the choice between Partey or Aouar. If we had to pick one, we've been crying out for a defensive enforcer for years, and with Torreira potentially leaving, why are we still not prioritising a strong DM? Who's going to fill that role? Well, I know we're also crying out for some more creativity in midfield, but it seems that people have forgotten about our lack of defensive midfield options. Yeah, I do agree with you, but I do think Partey is that kind of man that if Arsenal are to get Partey, then he would be that midfield enforcer. But as I've said, also he's not just that. He's not just pigeonholed as a midfield enforcer. He also plays further forward as well and can get forward and drive the team forward. But I do think if they manage to get Partey, that he would certainly add to that defensive shield in front of the midfield play, in front of the defence. Sorry. Last one, we have a lot of centre-backs at the moment. Other than Socrates, who else might leave? Chambers, if fit enough, I think it would be interesting to see if he at least gets a loan deal right at the end of the window to try and get his fitness up. Whether a club really wants to take him on, though, perhaps might stop that happening. But Mustafi, if Arsenal can get him out, looking unlikely at the moment, but they'll still certainly try in the next couple of weeks to get Mustafi out. Right, I think that's it. Just scrolling through, not really coming up to any that I've missed out on. It's all very similar. So as I said at the start of this, I'm not, please don't get annoyed if I haven't answered your question. It's just because there's so many here that I'm just scrolling down. But they're all questions that I've kind of answered elsewhere. So I'm gonna cut this down. Rahil here asks, wants to know more about Alex Renard the Alex Runarsson situation. When will it be official? We'll have to wait and see. I'm recording this on Thursday at the moment. Today he's having his medical ahead of his move. The medical's over in France. I think it's going to be unlikely he'll be involved in the West Ham game, just given he's in France at the moment. I think they've got Matt Macy anyway, so not in any rush really to get him over and get him in the squad for the West Ham game. But it's getting close to being done. Medicals today, and it's not going to be a difficult deal to complete. So I think that will be official. Even maybe by the time I tweet this or I've uploaded this video. But as of today, and it's Thursday now that I'm recording this, he's having his medicals today over in France. Okay, right, that's it. I'm going to call time on this now. So thank you very much for watching, everyone, and taking part in the 2 Q&As, yesterday's and today's. Please do head over and look at part 1 if you're only just seeing this one for now. Enjoy your weekends, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy Arsenal, hopefully beating West Ham and getting another 3 points on the board. And I will be back as soon as possible to do another one of these Q&As, so please do check out my Twitter feed at Charles_Watts. When I do post my next tweet asking for your questions, get involved. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a good day.